Let's ruffle some feathers, everybody. Which is better, glass tanks or rack systems? I'm going to tell you what I think is better and why. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in this week. I'm Jeremy. You guys are watching Morphs. This week's video, we're going to go over what I think is better, glass tanks or rack systems. I'm going to tell you exactly why I think it. Before we get into it, though, hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Hit that notification bell. Hit that like button because it helps our videos get out into the algorithm. And leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think is better. And if you like this video, let me know. And also let me know if you guys have any ideas for future content. I'm starting to get through my list a little bit so I could use some more ideas. Wow, she's tight. Anyway, so let's get into this video, unless Lagatha chokes me out. So let's go over the pros of a glass tank system. First of all, you get to view your snake. I mean, as you guys can see, Zena's out and about. You get the viewer. It's one of the most, viewing our snakes is one thing we all want to do. Snakes are beautiful. They provide us entertainment, even if we're just watching them crawl around in their natural enclosure. It gives, I mean, let's face it, we all want to see these beautiful animals doing their thing because they are indeed just stunning. So that is one big benefit to the glass enclosures, is that you get to view them. See, there's Zena right there right now coming across the screen. So another big thing as well is that glass enclosures naturally give a lot of space for the animal to move around. You have a lot of vertical height to it. You have a lot of length to it. You know, your snake can get a lot of exercise in a glass enclosure. Granted, there are PVC enclosures, which we'll talk about here in a little bit later on in the video. But glass enclosures do allow you to get that height and some of that length. And like I said before, you get to view them, which I think is probably the biggest pro to a glass enclosure, is the viewing capabilities. Now, what I would consider let's go over some of what I consider the cons of a glass enclosure. One of the big cons to a glass enclosure is it takes up a lot of space. Depending what your goal is, if you're planning on breeding snakes or something, glass enclosures are not going to be what you want to do. They take up an awful lot of space, and for like what I'm doing, I would not be able to keep the amount of ball pythons I have in glass enclosures. It would take a whole house. So glass enclosures are not a good choice for me. If you're looking at getting a ball python as a pet or any other snake as just solely a pet, glass enclosures are probably a good pick for you, because you're getting the animal because you want to view it, you want to enjoy it. And the glass enclosure, like I said, is the best way to be able to view and enjoy it. So space is a big con. Another con would be glass enclosures can sometimes make your snake feel vulnerable. So you can see all 360 degrees around that cage. And if you can see in at all angles, that means the snake can see in and out at all angles, and it may make them feel vulnerable. Snakes are, I don't want to say skittish animals, but they don't like to feel vulnerable. They like to hide. A lot of times if you have a snake that is nippy, it might be because they feel insecure in their environment and because they are so wide open. So you might need to black out like the sides and the back of your glass enclosure with construction paper, or like whatever the thick paper is. I guess construction paper is probably about the closest thing that I can come up with it. Poster board works great. That's what I did use there for a little bit. But use poster board to kind of black out the sides and the back, and just let your snake get some size to it. And normally, in my experience with doing that, as they grow a little bit, it does help them with their demeanor, and they kind of mellow out and they don't get as nippy and see everything as predators. So that there's another con, is the visibility is a pro, but the visibility is also a con. So it's a double-edged sword there. The space that they take. The other thing is, a lot of glass enclosures, you run into humidity issues. And I don't mean too much humidity, I mean not enough humidity. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind is how are you going to keep that humidity inside and with the glass enclosure. I know before I had used, and I still do use, from time to time, I'll put like a piece of acrylic glass across the top just to help keep some of that humidity inside. Now, granted, here in the snake room, I don't need to worry about it because my room naturally stays at about 55% humidity. So humidity wise, down here in the snake room, I'm covered. So I don't even need to put anything on the tanks anymore. But before, I did have to put a glass across the top, or like I said, acrylic. I had to put something across the top of that screen. Still allow some airflow. Make sure you let airflow through. But I did have to put something across there to help keep some of that humidity in. Another thing I had to do on occasion to help keep that humidity in there as well was mist the cage. And basically just go through with a spray bottle, mist the substrate, and let that absorb that water, so that way it naturally kind of emits that humidity into the air. And with your screen covering, with your screen being covered up, it helps keep the ambient humidity in there, because most snakes, especially pythons, need on average, I'd say between 50 to 60% humidity, depending on what species and everything that is too. So keep that in mind. So that there is another con, is the fact that it's difficult to keep humidity in the cages. Now, some cages, I think it's Zilla, some of their cages, the ones that are front door openings, they do have little plastic covers you can stick over on the screen. Those are great. I did keep the carpets in them for a little bit as well, and I had great luck with them. I still had to mist them down on occasion just because they did lose humidity here and there, but all in all, they were nice cages. So that basically covers what I think about the glass enclosures. Now let's talk about the rack systems. Rack systems are great. I love rack systems. I'm glad I have rack systems. Like I said before, with the rack systems, I can keep the amount of snakes that I do have because I wouldn't be able to do it in glass enclosures. So let's go over the pros of a rack system. One, quantity that you can keep of snakes, especially if you're a breeder. You're going to have rack systems. That's just all there is to it. Plain and simple. Unless you have a whole house you can dedicate to your snakes, you're going to need rack systems, because snakes take up a lot of space in glass enclosures. So the rack systems give the snake what they need, and it gives you the space to house as many snakes as what you do need to house. All right, so we got space covered. You can keep a lot of snakes in a smaller area with rack systems. Rack systems as well, especially for ball pythons, since ball pythons like smaller, tighter spaces, the tubs are perfect for ball pythons. Helps make them feel secure. Now you see I have clear tubs that you can see through. Some people would say that that isn't as good as the solid gray tubs, but you know what? I like to allow my snakes to have some natural sunlight coming in. I also like the clear tubs and the semi-clear tubs because it allows me to be able to see where the snake's at, and I know what I'm getting into when it comes to feeding night. Lets me know if I need to get the snake hook out to, pull the tub open and all that fun stuff. So another benefit to the tubs. But the tubs do give them that level of security that ball pythons need, especially. And they work great for so many other species as well. Like boa breeders use tubs. I mean, just about all snake breeders use tubs because of how great these rack systems really are. Especially with the amount of snakes that most breeders do keep, you got to have the rack systems. On top of that, humidity. Rack systems are great at holding in. I apologize, everybody. I have to hear it wants to go behind the chair for some reason. Rack systems are great for holding in humidity. It's just the way they're designed. Ventilation is up front by the water bowl normally. You have the heat in the back, so you get that nice temperature gradient. Along with it allows some moisture to come out of the tub, but it doesn't allow too much moisture to come out. So you have the perfect temperature gradient, you have the perfect humidity gradient, or perfect ambient humidity, I should say. Every once in a while, you may need to mist the substrate down, depending on where your room's at, what your ambient humidity is in the room. Here in the snake room, like I said, it's about 55% humidity constantly, so I don't really need to do a whole lot of misting, which is great. So, pros so far. Space is a big plus. It has a lot of snakes in a small area compared to the glass tanks. Temps and humidity are easier to control in the tubs, in my opinion anyway. You can debate me on that. I think most people are going to say temps and humidity are a lot easier to control in the tubs. In the sense of security, it gives your snakes being in the tubs, especially ball pythons, it allows them to feel secure. So I don't think you can put a price on that. All in all, rack systems to me, as a breeder standpoint, are a must. Or if you're a hobbyist that's going to keep a decent amount of snakes, you might want to think about a rack system as well. Let's go about the cons. There are cons to a rack system. I hate to tell you, everybody, there are cons. One, you don't get the visibility of your animal like you do with the glass enclosures. I mean, you can see into these, yes, but you don't get to visually see the snake as nice as you do with the glass enclosure. That's the biggest downfall to the rack systems, is that you don't get the visibility of your animal, because let's face it, these things are absolutely stunning. We love the way they look. We want to see them. That's part of the reason why we're even into this hobby, is because we love these animals so much. It's just a downfall with rack systems. I mean, you're never going to have everything that you want in one package. That's just all there is to it. So not being able to view your animal like you would in a glass enclosure is a big negative, in my opinion. Another negative is that rack systems aren't visually appealing just to have throughout your house. I mean, maybe to you they are. To me, they're not. I like my rack systems. I love them, but I would not just go and have them throughout my house and expect people to think that my house is extremely nice and clean looking. They definitely do belong in more of a designated room to themselves. They don't make the nicest looking furniture stuff. I do think that my ARS racks do have a warmer feel to them than some other rack systems, but it's still not something, they're still not something that I want just laying around my house, or I shouldn't say laying around, but sitting around my house as furniture, so to speak. So rack systems aren't very visually appealing to be out and about in your house, as opposed to doing up a glass enclosure, because you can make some glass enclosures really, really awesome. All right, so covered the glass enclosures, pros and cons. We covered the rack systems, pros and cons. Let's go over the kind of in between, the PVC enclosures. With PVC enclosures, I think they're kind of the happy medium, depending what you're planning on doing as far as a keeper. If you're planning on just keeping a few and you wanted something that's maybe a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to have in your house and still gives your snakes a sense of security, PVC enclosures are a great, great option. You get normally they're solid balls on the sides and backs made of PVC board, and you get a glass front, so you can still have the viewing pleasure of your animal. Your animal still has that safety feel of, I have this having a moment here. You still have that safety. The snakes still have that safety feel of, being secure and being in a more tighter area, so to speak. They keep in humidity because they are enclosed on all sides and including the top. Normally they do have some ventilation at some point cut into the enclosure, but that's just needed for air circulation, along with, exchanging, letting some humidity out so that way it doesn't get too high. But PVC enclosures do allow you to keep humidity in a lot better than just a glass enclosure. They are aesthetically more pleasing than a rack system. You could set PVC enclosures throughout the house. I wouldn't mind doing that with some of my snakes eventually. And, it allows, you can stack them. So it's not as efficient space-wise as, say, a rack system is, but they definitely don't take up as much space as a glass enclosure. So PVC enclosures are like the perfect happy medium. They do make, I don't want to say they make nice furniture, but PVC enclosures are visually appealing in like a house, so to speak. I wouldn't have a problem with them. They, like I said, they keep humidity in great. Your snakes still feel secure in them. You get the visibility of them. I don't really think that there's really a downside to the PVC stuff unless there again, you're breeding. Certain snakes will do better, granted, breeding wise in the PVC enclosures just because it might be a bigger species. Like carpet pythons will do great in PVC enclosures. I don't think rack systems are really designed that well or that much in mind with the carpets. I mean, you can keep carpets in rack systems, but carpets like to climb. So you have to have something that gives them a little bit of height. So I think PVC enclosures offer that. They're kind of like the best of both worlds. You can keep more PVC enclosures in one area compared to glass enclosures. You can't keep as many snakes in a PVC enclosure as you can in a rack system. But it's a give and take. It's kind of what works best for you. You have to know what your situation is. Where you're planning on going is another thing. If you're planning on becoming a breeder for ball pythons, I would suggest getting like a PVC rack system, or, you know, just kind of depending where you want to go with it, PVC rack system, or even just a normal rack system from like ARS or Freedom Breeder or any of the other people that make a rack system. You have to know what is going to be best for you. Now that I've gone through pros and cons of both racks and glass enclosures and brought up to PVC enclosures, you want to know what I think is best? There is no best. That's the simple answer. There is no best enclosures. Each one of them has pros and cons that the other has or doesn't have, and it all boils down to what is your situation and what do you, well, like, what's the purpose of? Well, what purpose are you shooting for? Are you going to become a breeder? Rack systems are probably going to be the better way to go, in my opinion. Breeding wise, rack systems. If you're going to have just a couple snakes and you want to have them in your house as a viewing pleasure or whatever, glass enclosures are probably the better route for you to go, or a PVC enclosure at that. Just do your research, know what your snakes need, and know what you're getting into as well. I would definitely suggest if you are doing if you're going to breed things, something like ball pythons or colubrids, I think would they thrive in rack systems as well. But if you're going to be breeding, I highly suggest the rack systems. If you're going to be breeding things like carpet pythons or some of your bigger constrictors, like boas, they do good in rack systems as well. There are some huge rack systems out there. You can also do the PVC enclosures like I'm going to do for my carpets here in a short while. I'm actually still looking into the PVC enclosures, finding out which one I think is better for what I want and need. So there again, like I said, there's no right or wrong. Yeah, that's probably going to ruffle some feathers. I'm sorry. There is no right or wrong. It's what works best for you and what is best for your animals is what you need to go with. Like I said, if you don't agree with that, then let's just agree to disagree. I think that's the better way to go on that one, because I really don't think there is a better or a worse way to go. As long as you set up your glass enclosures properly, your snakes will thrive. As long as you do your rack systems properly, your snakes are going to thrive. That's the end of it. As long as you set up your PVC enclosures properly, your snakes are going to thrive. It's just up to the breeder or the hobbyist or whoever is taking care of the animal to do your part and do your research and know what you're getting into and know what your snake needs and requires. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope I didn't ruffle too many feathers. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, leave me a comment down below. What's your thoughts? What do you think is better? Do you agree with me that neither of them are better and that they're all kind of the same? It's all on how you want to go about it and to what extent you're taking the hobby. So leave me a comment, let me know. Don't forget, every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here at Morphs, we have a live. Normally we have an awesome guest on. I know I have some really cool people lined up. I'm getting even more people lined up here for guests. Every once in a while I will do a solo show, just that way I can, talk with my audience a little bit more, answer some questions and just sit around and kind of, talk, random stuff and just kind of hang out and chill. I think it kind of breaks up the consistent, interview type of deal things. So I think it's a nice little touch to do here and there. So we're probably going to do that here eventually in the near future again, because it was middle of January when I did the last one. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit all the buttons and everything. You guys know what to do. Take care, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Later.